Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host, and we are back this week. It feels like it's been forever since we have recorded one of these. It's what happens when you get busy, when projects keep rolling, and you gotta just tend to clients. So, Matt, how's it going, man?
Oh, things are good, man. It does feel like it's been a minute since we both sat down in front of the mics, but we keep it going no matter what. So that's the important thing. We're getting snow here, as you can see now by my background, but we're getting real snow outside my door. So it's winter is upon us.
I am not looking forward to that. So it's been nice here. We got rain like last week. And then, yeah, like here lately, it's been 60, sunny, nice. I mean, the pass is closed. So, I mean, I can hit snow if I want in the mountains, but uh, I got to go up to 10,000 feet to do that.
Yeah. You live in that cool, that microclimate or whatever. You can change your weather by driving. We don't have that option here in the Midwest. It is what it is.
Yeah, cold, bad. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily miss that from living in Indy. Like, it's just cold, nothing to do.
Man, ever since I've been back from our trip in Florida, from my family trip down to Florida, we just keep questioning, like, what the hell are we doing? Because if you're not familiar with Midwest weather, and this may be in other parts of the world too, but here especially, from about now, about mid-November till mid-March, maybe, it's going to be gray, dark, ugly, and cold, and that's it. And I mean, people get depressed, they get physically ill from this shit, and yet here I am. I've been here my entire life in some form or fashion, but I think we're getting close, man. If it was easier to take my company, if I had a e-com company or something that I could do from anywhere, it wouldn't even be a question. But starting a new construction company in Florida or something, that it's kind of a daunting task for me right now.
Especially learning like all the other, building codes and not just, standing up a new business, but everything that goes into a different jurisdiction and people and hard.
Yeah, man. I mean, especially in construction, you're talking a completely different type of construction overall, and seismic, blah blah blah, and lots of concrete and hurricanes, and maybe the cold dark gray isn't so bad.
So what are we talking about today?
So today we're gonna have a quicker episode than normal, since we're both busier than shit these days. We're gonna cruise the news, see what the hell's happening in construction. And I basically went through before we got on live here, and I've got a few different articles I pulled out. I'm going to give you the headlines. I'm going to give you some key factors, and see what you think about it. See where the conversation goes.
Love it.
All right, man. So let's get it started then. While you were gone, I let out my little my rant about construction staffing and how we all have to work to solve the problems we have with people not coming into the trades. I found this pretty cool program recently. It's called Helmets to Hard Hats, and it is a program set up for veterans to bring military veterans out of their military career and into the trades. And there's all kinds of correlations up to why and how military and service members would do good in a construction environment, especially the more labor intensive side of construction. But yeah, I thought it was a cool program, man. It's in my mind anything to bring more people in. I'm focused more on youth and building up our farm clubs, but that's just where I'm at locally. But in my mind, anything to bring humans into the trades is a win-win.
Yeah, I see that in a few different areas. So, one, most construction projects are pretty, I won't say rigorous, but structured, right? So that structured environment, you put a footing in and a foundation before you put in, top deck, right? It's got a series of steps you need to go through. And from, military, like that's a pretty, I won't say straightforward, but easy transition. And then on top of that, with putting in guys that have been leaders into leadership positions, or elevating them through in construction companies, the project managers or superintendents or VPs, whatever that might be. Now you have more structure through the entire organization. And what I see, the downfall really of any organization is that it doesn't have structure, it doesn't have discipline, it doesn't have standards. And in construction, you have to hold a standard. I mean, any company does that, but for especially in the trades, right? Especially in the built side of things, you really have to have that standard and you have to adhere to it. If you don't, bad things happen, whether the building collapses or just you got to redo a project. So the more you're able to really hold those standards, hold the line in that, and have people that understand, what holding the line means, you're going to be more successful. So, I mean, I see it as a real big benefit to bringing, our veterans into organizations. And then so long as you can continue to have that structure around, maybe not their days, but just structure around, what's going on. That's why military is very successful, right? In their jobs is because of that structure and because of chain of command, a lot of those things. So
Yes.
if you're able to implement that in your own firm and then bring in people to help support that, right? This is your area of expertise. This is your thing. You take care of all this stuff and, let us take care of this. And we all communicate through that. That's how you have a successful organization. So I think we can learn a lot from, our veterans and bringing them into organizations. And then construction is, I think, one of the easiest corollaries. And especially some of the guys, depending on what they did, like if they were, Army Corps or stuff like that, and they were actually building projects, for the Army or whatever, in their service side.
For sure, man. And you touched on chain of command. That's huge to me, and not that, on our job sites, it's not quite as a rigid of a chain of command as out on the battlefield, obviously, but there is that chain of command that has to be adhered to, because you right, wrong, or indifferent, you can't have your day laborer jumping ahead in the chain and going and voicing his opinion or his problems to the owner, or to the developer. You have to maintain that method of communication and that level of each link in the chain on a construction project, because otherwise just bad things happen. And much like with the military, you get stuck in a situation where day to day, you don't really know what it's going to be like. You don't know what the weather is going to be like. You don't necessarily know where you might be physically located at, or who you're going to run into. On a given job site, we might have 100 people running around. And it might be 50 different people than were there yesterday. And you have to, it's almost like a psychology background too would be helpful. But you got to be able to communicate effectively with anyone that you're put into the trenches, figuratively, or with, you're out there doing battle on the battlefield, you're out there building on the construction site. You got to know that the guy next to you, shoulder to shoulder, also kind of has your back and is working safely and knows what has to happen and what needs to be put in place. So I agree. I think it's a cool program. And again, in my mind, any way to boost interest in the trades and to influx more people that want to be there, that's always a good thing for us. They do mention that they're also looking, hopefully in the future, to get more into focus on growth for construction management and admin type positions too, which would be huge, especially from the leadership side, like you kind of touched on.
Yeah, I mean, it's always just an evolution, right? Of you come in one place and then continue that evolution through the rest of, construction, whether that's going up to a PM, a superintendent, a, VP of ops, whatever that might be.
All right, man. I kind of like this format. It's short, sweet, to the point. So we're going to go on to the next one here. I'll be honest with you. This one I find to be kind of goofy. So the headline is, Public and private teams gear up for lunar construction. And the article is talking about despite challenges in cost and environment, there is a large contingency of people out there who think that we need to be planning to build and to colonize in otherworldly realms, specifically first on the moon and then on Mars. The problem is, at a cost of a mere 81 happen. So this article gets into a lot of basically 3D printing on the moon and using what we have available, what materials are available on the moon to then try and create and build and do all the stuff we do down here. What are your thoughts, man? Are we building in space?
So first, what was the cost again? You froze on me.
$81 million per astronaut. And so the point, if I blanked out for a while there, the point was you can't send a bunk of 2x4s with that astronaut also, right? You got to be able to figure out how to use whatever the hell we can find and dig and mine from whatever floating orb we land on.
So I see this in two ways. One, it's interesting to think about, right? And the architecture firms that have kind of led this, or like HOK and SOM, have been the two that have put a lot behind it in developing some of these designs that I've seen. And while it's a cool thing to think about, I honestly don't know if architects are the right people to like figure this out. One, and then two, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot of 3D printing. It's going to be figuring out how to do that in zero gravity, right? Because that's part of 3D printing, is that you do with gravity,
right?
That you don't have stuff floating around. So, do we have the ability to do it? Sure. Is it something that, I mean, somebody's going to go for it, like whether it's Elon or Branson or, Bezos or whatever, some of the billionaires, like I think we're going to do it. It's now a matter of, yeah, cost is a thing for sure. And, if you get these people where it's like not a cost motive on building it, right, to where let's see how much this thing is going to cost and our fees based on how expensive this thing is, versus like, you take the SpaceX approach and let's get costs as low as possible to then be, more effective in what we're doing, and more aligned incentives than like just raping our government for a shit ton of money, like the F-35 project has cost us, is stuff like that, right? So I think, is it doable? Sure. Is it practical? I don't know. Like, that's a different question. And, if we're going to start mining stuff and whatever, then okay. My other question is like, what does that mess up when you take a big chunk out of the thing that's floating around us, and then it messes with our oceans and all the pull for that, because that's how tides form.
Yep.
So like, there's a lot of other questions I think that need to be asked before we start like taking chunks out of the moon. And then, is it, I mean, it's always possible. Is it practical? Probably not. Is there going to be unintended consequences to it? Yeah. What those are, I couldn't tell you.
I mean, we could get into a whole different topic here about, all the climate and environment wackos down here on Earth. Where the hell are those people going to be when we start, running the excavator on Mars or on the moon? So there is actually an organization that NASA has, and it's called the Moon to Mars Planetary Autonomous Construction Technology Project. And you'll like this one. Here's for being aggressive. NASA hopes to be on track for sustained human presence on the moon by 2028. That's not that far away, man.
I mean, we haven't been back to the moon in whatever 50 years now. So And like a lot of Elon stuff was to launch everything from the moon to Mars. Just you don't have now escape velocity. You have to get around to do that. So from a cost perspective, now it's like how do you get fuel up there, and all this other stuff, which a lot of it's got to be nuclear fuel sources to be powered and do that. But from we can do it. Like it's just, do people want to? Right? Like we have the technology to get to moon, we have the technology to build stuff, and then ultimately it's who's paying for it, and do we want to sustain that presence?
Here's another interesting thing to think about. So, especially here in the snowy, cold Midwest, I'm looking out my window now as the blizzard has started again. We our buildings go through massive thermal shifts, right? And that wreaks havoc on certain building materials. So on the moon, temperatures can range from negative 250 degrees in the dark to like positive 250 degrees in the sunshine. I mean, 3D printing or not, there's a whole lot of thought that has to be put into this, because yeah, you might be able to slurp out a building out of some machine, and it's some concrete like substance, but is it going to be able to actually last? Is it going to make it through one of these thermal cycles? And the whole thing, I
Froze out there for a second.
yeah, man, my trying to record on a weekend when all of my kids are home, I think is posing to be a challenge in and of itself. I was just saying, I think the whole thing's a little silly. Not sure it's really necessary, and not sure that it's a real good expenditure of our nation's tax dollars to be trying to figure this one out quite yet.
I'm with you. We got our own problems here to solve first.
So that's a good segue into the last one here we're going to look at. Speaking of gigantic expenditures, the esports market has now surpassed $1 billion, $1 billion in annual revenue. And that's taken a lot of construction firms with it, which is crazy to think. JLL, the big real estate service company, it had a report in here, and they're basically saying that the demand for brick and mortar esports facilities now is just going through the roof, even though it's largely a virtual crowd and it's virtual games, but there is a huge demand for an actual brick and mortar place to go do this. There's actually the largest facility is in Arlington, Texas, 100,000 square foot esports stadium. What are your thoughts on that, man? Let the construction side of it first, but then we can get into the whole esports thing and how it's quite possibly killing off sports and game as we know it.
So two things. So we had Caesar Duran. He was, I believe, episode 100 to talk a little bit about building these things. One, I mean, honestly, from a construction and arena standpoint, because these are specifically built for gaming, right?
Yes.
You don't need a huge basketball deal. You've got more screens and interactive. You've got the big billboards. So you got the team sitting down in the center, and then you've got really all your seating and stadium stuff is vastly different from all other sports. So they're dedicated things. But the cool thing is for esports is that you can basically interchange whatever game they're playing. So now you go through the slew of games, video games, and then you can add, or you can use the same arena for 10 games. So now your volume of use of that facility, unlike most other sports arenas, goes drastically up. And that's from a city standpoint and infrastructure standpoint, because that's a problem with most stadiums is they're not profitable and they're really a leech on the city. That's why the St. Louis kicked out the Rams and other stuff moving in that direction. So from a money standpoint, I think that esports is going to be a big boost to many cities. Frankly, from a construction standpoint, it's going to bring a lot of building and a lot of infrastructure to that, as arenas are some of the most expensive things that we build. So from a dollars into society and construction standpoint, I think it's a really good thing. And then to the other point on game, I think that, again, it's just a different type. Video games have been around for now, whatever, 60 years. And it brings people together. Now you have community around that thing, and doing it in person, making them physical events, I think is really bringing more community around those sports, just like basketball or anything else, and bringing people to physical arenas.
That's an interesting outlook on it, and one I hadn't thought when I was looking through this article. I mean, if you look at the Metro Detroit area specifically, I mean, we've done a very good job in the last 10 years of tearing down these just monstrosity, but beautiful, amazing stadiums. We got rid of the Silver Dome. We got rid of Tiger Stadium. We just tore down the Palace of Auburn Hills, man, was like where the Pistons played. It was a beautiful building. They just completed a couple $1 million renovation not that long ago. And now we've got, the Pistons play at whatever, the Little Caesars Arena downtown now with the Red Wings. And that building is just blown up not long ago. And it's amazing to see, because like you mentioned, they're built very much like a one-trick pony, right? You can't do a whole lot with a basketball stadium if basketball is no longer going to occupy its four walls. So to kind of multitask, I guess, multitask your building, multi-use your building, that's kind of a cool way to look at it. As far as a sport goes, I don't dislike the esports thing in general. And frankly, I think that's where most things are going. I think if you look at, all the concussion shit that we're learning about and paying attention to now, I think it's only a matter of time before actual physical contact sports are frankly no longer a thing. I'm not sure I like it, but I think that's a reality we're coming into. And if esports can fill that void and still, I've drastically stopped or cut down on my sporting, my watching of sports lately in the last couple of years, because frankly, U of M football it adds too much stress to my life. But if you can do it and fill that need with esports, that's to each his own. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's just another way to spend some time, spend some money, and as long as nobody's getting hurt, I guess I don't really care.
Yeah, and it's really just football, on the concussion side of things. Like, you don't see like catastrophic injuries in really any other sport. I mean, you compare it to rugby, like rugby does not have that. But again, when you pad, and this has been my argument for a long time, when you pad and helmet everybody up, now you use your head as a spear. What do you think is going to happen? And that doesn't happen in rugby. You're going to protect yourself, so you're not going to, go head first into somebody. So I think for football, if they took off the pads, it would be a lot safer than what it is today. Frankly.
Look at how they started. We've all seen the old videos of those guys, those little like leather condoms on their heads. That was crazy to even think about, but you hit it. That's why, you didn't have catastrophic injuries, not nearly as frequent anyways.
Yeah. And then on like multi-use, like most stadiums, they'll have concerts and stuff, but it's few and far between, and they're just not used. It's not like every weekend there's something in those facilities. So if you can now have regular events every weekend to fill those stadiums, I mean, that's how they become profitable. And then again, it's all about community. Like, you want to be around people, you want to go see something, you want to share a common interest. Because face it, most of the people in the stands for any sporting event cannot play that sport, right? They're overweight, they're whatever. So there's nothing different than that. And, the esports side of things from a spectator standpoint, right?
For sure. And, being around community, that's another good point, especially if you look out here, if you're not going on out there other than when the Pistons were there. So now we bring everything into downtown Detroit, which I also have my feelings about the validity of that, but at least now you're kind of pushing everybody together. There's more stuff to do. I will say I've seen some behind the scenes kind of engineering insight into Little Caesars Arena, and it's pretty cool how they switch from ice hockey rink to a basketball court, on a daily basis. Sometimes it's really kind of neat to watch that happen, and get kind of two uses out of one roof. So good on them, I suppose.
Absolutely. You can only do so much.
Right. Well, Dillon, that's it, man. Those are my three news topics. Anything else you want to touch on before we jump out of here? I know you've been a busy man lately.
Yeah. The biggest thing, guys, with the construction industry, not only is bringing people into the trades, as we will keep hammering on, but is also just being in more touch with our clients, right? Building your own community within your people. So we create buildings, we build community. That's what we do, right? The physical infrastructure around communities. And sometimes I think we forget the psychology, the emotional aspects of those communities, and continue or forget to, or just don't want to follow up with our clients, with the buildings that we build, to make sure that everything's running smooth, operating correctly. We just kind of leave those clients in that building alone. And this goes for everybody on that project team. I just don't see enough contact back to those clients, those occupants on those buildings. And to really have more connection to the projects that you do, both internally and externally, having the opening ceremonies and bringing people around, the design team to see what they actually worked on, and bringing everybody together and doing that over a long period of time. You can do that simply through newsletters and letting people know, what's going on, what you're working on, sending that to your full client list. I've created one for construction and just what's going on and different things, right? Like how to create community, how to adapt and overcome and different stuff. So like this month, it'll actually be going out tomorrow. So as of this recording, it'll be out for November. But I talk about like wineries and how you can build community for something as simple as that, right? And do that in construction. Do that through our industry and being able to add that, special touch to everything that you do. So adding some little things, little pieces to just being in more contact with your clients and continue to be a part of the community is going to extremely be beneficial for you. And they're my dogs, right? So it's stuff like that, right? And building community. So do what you can to build your own community around your projects.
Absolutely, man. And I would highly encourage anybody listening to sign up for Dillon's newsletter. He's being modest about it. It's a pretty cool thing he's doing. I received the first issue last month and was thoroughly impressed. So where's the best place for people to sign up for that? Is it through LinkedIn or through Cowabunga Studios?
Yeah, so I'll drop a link here in the podcast recording, but you can go to cowabungastudios.com/construction letter and pick it up there. So go to the website, cowabungastudios.com/construction letter, and you can then sign up for the list from there. And we look forward to, I'll send it out every month. It's only physical, no digital copies, to kind of keep it a little special, a little intimate. And again, just give you guys some thoughts, ideas around what you can do to make some fun things, right? And keep in contact with your clients, and also keep it away from your competitors.
And that's a big key, man. It's doing more than anybody else is willing to. So guys, check it out. Dillon's newsletter, sign up for it. And along those same lines, share this show, get your friends and your coworkers to give us a spin, give us a listen, help us grow this movement that we're trying so hard to keep going here. As we continue to make the trades cool again and to build community through everything we're doing, we need everybody's help on that fight. So give us a share, give us a like, and we'll do what we keep doing.
Guys, thanks for listening. Share the show, build better in your communities, be a better part of your community. This all starts with us. And the more that we can do that, the better everything else gets. So until next time.